perspective and insights you need to minimize the risk and maximize the value of your investments. Because it's not simply how much data you have, it's how clearly you see it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Realcomm Live. Got an exciting topic, kind of not new to the landscape, but maybe the last 12, 18 months. About 5 years ago, Realcomm, we took the initiative to announce some new mega trends that were starting to make their way into not just our world, but the general tech world. That was artificial intelligence, immersive, augmented, AI, autonomous vehicles. But one we did not bring up back then was this thing called the Metaverse. And it's really probably about 12, 18 months old as far as mainstream goes, where we started to hear about it. I'm sure they've been working in the labs much before that. But over the last 6 to 9 months, it's getting a lot of publicity, a lot of hype. And we're already seeing the real estate industry being pulled into it. All you got to do is go up to Google and type Metaverse real estate. I was actually going to have a screen cap of it, but the list just went on and on and on. So we felt it was time to start digging into this topic of the metaverse as it relates to the built environment. And I will just start out with saying, if you've ever seen the innovation curve, or the adoption curve, I should say, you'll know that new tech goes through a number of phases. Innovator, early adopter, the curve goes straight up. We'll call it the early majority, late majority, and then the laggard. We are definitely in the early stages of this. We're probably going to have multiple Realcomm Live episodes on this. We're going to have webinars on this. We're going to bring it to the conference. So this is conversation one with the metaverse as it relates to the real estate industry. And we've got a great guest today. Let's bring on Kunal Lunawat. As you hear Kunal's story, you're going to hear that he's got very deep credentials and has got experience in other areas other than real estate, but made the decision to actually come on and get involved in the metaverse in the early stages. So with that, let's bring him on. Kunal, how are you?
For having me over.
It's so good to have you here, and hopefully you're going to bring a little clarity or more confusion. That's fine to the new hot topic, right? The metaverse. And then, we're going to spend the first half of our conversation talking about the metaverse in general. And then we're going to quickly, after the break, pivot to the implications to real estate, and specifically commercial real estate. So why don't you give the audience a little brief background on yourself for some context, and then we get the conversation started.
Sure thing. So I grew up in a real estate family. My dad's a real estate developer back in India. Came to the United States for college, where I studied economics at Yale, and then worked in real estate private equity at Blackstone across a wide range of asset classes, investing. This was in 2011. Post PX, went to business school, which is really where I got more interested in product and tech, like a bunch of my colleagues and friends in business school. Built product for an insurance company for a while, and then co-founded Agya Ventures in 2019. Which is essentially a seed and Series A stage fund investing in the future of work, retail, and hospitality, which is another way of saying that we invest in Proptech. So that's been my journey so far. And the pivot from real estate to tech has been exciting for a host of reasons. But the biggest is, the future of real estate is going to be shaped by tech. And to be at the forefront of that is very fulfilling and exciting.
Yeah, and if you look at the paradigm shifts, agrarian age, and then move into the industrial age, and then pre-information age, which I think we're just coming out of now, really getting ready for the internet age, or whatever we're going to call it. The way we use and operate real estate has significantly changed, and I think is going to continue to change. And this whole metaverse concept is just going to be another layer. So let's talk about the beginning of the metaverse as we know it. My little bit of research, I see big players, big tech players like Meta, Microsoft just announced their acquisition of Activision. I hear Apple's, hiring engineers left and right, Qualcomm, Nvidia. So those are the tech players. But then we have these things called Decentraland and Sandbox. And in the gaming world, they'll tell you that the metaverse has been around for 15 years in places like Fortnite and Minecraft. So give us your definition of the metaverse and maybe a little understanding of who these players are.
Sure thing. So, one way to think about it is the way we are having this conversation right now, and with the audience dialing in, it's somewhat antiquated because we have a screen that's kind of dividing us, and the conversation has its boundaries in terms of how personable and conversational it can get. The metaverse is out there to change that. And what that means is instead of looking at the internet, the metaverse's key promise is that we are going to be inside the internet. Now, what does that mean? We're going to be inside the internet through our 3D avatars in a way that makes our conversations more fluid and natural. It does not promise to substitute physical real world interactions. I think that's always going to have a place because as human beings, we're social creatures. But what it does promise is it does promise a new look at the internet and how conversations happen on the internet. So in its very foundational principles, I think that's what the metaverse is. It's conversational in nature.
We've got a clip. Mark Zuckerberg did an hour video on this, and I would really encourage anybody who's in the real estate industry who's trying to understand this. I watched the whole hour, and you got to watch the whole hour because he goes into the different aspects of business and social and gaming, the challenges. Let's play a brief clip from Mark Zuckerberg's introduction of the metaverse, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit about these lands, if you will.
So let's start by exploring what different kinds of metaverse experiences could feel like, starting with the most important experience of all, connecting with people. Imagine you put on your glasses or headset and you're instantly in your home space. It has parts of your physical home recreated virtually, it has things that are only possible virtually, and it has an incredibly inspiring view of whatever you find most beautiful.
Hey, are you coming?
Yeah, just gotta find something to wear. All right, perfect.
All right, so that's just a snippet. All right, I mean, and if you watch the entire hour, I mean, he gets on his wakeboard and he goes from a physical world into a virtual world. But what's really interesting is to your comment earlier about look at the way we're communicating now. I mean, pre-pandemic, not many people were even doing this. Okay, video conferencing, as a mainstream way of doing business. The pandemic forced us in 2 years to shift this quick. But I agree, the technology is old. But Bill Gates came up and said, and has not always got it right. He was pretty not right on the internet, if you remember that clip. But he said he believes 30% of our office time, our work time, is going to be spent in the metaverse. Okay, do you have an understanding of what he means by that?
It's tough to pinpoint a number, whether it's going to be 30% or 50% or 20%. But what I would say is, in technology, we often look at inflection points. And those inflection points, which when they happen, lead to adoption at a mass scale. I'd give you the example of the smartphone world. Smartphones had been around since the late 1990s, early 2000s. You had BlackBerry, you had Palm OS and whatnot. And it was really until 2007 when the iPhone came to be, and then the App Store was born because of the iPhone, that smartphone penetration reached that inflection point. And today it's become a ubiquitous part of our lives to the extent that there are problems with people spending too much time on the smartphone. Now, if you draw a parallel analogy with the metaverse, I mean, one could say that 3D, VR, AR headsets have been around for 6 to 7 years. Correct. And we're really at that point in time where you have tons of capital going in, you have some of the brightest talent working at the solution, and one feels that inflection points around the corner, which could be either through a hardware device, which then builds a platform, which makes the metaverse ubiquitous, or which could be a platform to begin with. And there are applications built on top of that platform, which then make the metaverse ubiquitous. So I think that's at the heart of this conversation.
Yeah, and if you're in the real estate business and you want to be very scientific on when to jump in, that may not be a bad approach. And I would argue that the mobile phone actually started in the '85 timeframe because I had that big box that sat in my trunk of my car, right? The brick, I think we called it. So if you go '85 to 2007, that's 22 years. Okay. Now the internet from its inception, early, actually that goes way back as well. If you go all the way back to the DARPA stuff, the planning. But if you could figure out what that time frame was in the various stages of adoption, because a lot of money will be spent and lost in the early stages, correct?
Right.
Yeah. And so what we're going to talk about when we come back from the break is when and how. Well, first of all, what are the applications that the real estate community can be looking for, the commercial real estate community, and then when is the appropriate time? But before we go to the break, let's bring Kunal back real quick. Before we go to the break, I have one more question for him. Kunal, the chief metaverse officer. Now, I've never heard that one until we started chatting. What is and I can't say CMO because that's chief marketing officer, but what is a chief metaverse officer?
Let's call them the chief meta officer. I would say that that kind of ties in well into our the next segment of our conversation, which is we're seeing a lot of applications of the metaverse, especially in the field of luxury retail. And I think that's the first industry that's going to start hiring candidates that essentially define and then execute the metaverse strategy for a lot of these brands.
Right. Yeah, and I would also encourage the audience to take a few minutes. Our team did, and we went up to Decentraland and we logged in and downloaded and did everything we could and got my avatar, did not look anything like me, and started running around and fell down the fountain and knocked on some doors. Got a little frustrated that my mouse wasn't behaving the way it normally would, but I remember the early days of all technology, and it's clunky at first, but we can definitely see some potential. So let's take a short break. We'll come back, and then we're going to have a conversation more specific as it relates to the metaverse and the commercial and corporate real estate industry.
You've come to know Prologis as a world-class partner in logistics real estate solutions. Now we're taking that expertise beyond the building with Prologis Essentials. As your real estate provider, Prologis experts are out in the field, hearing firsthand from your teams about the dynamics of your business and the challenges of a constantly evolving environment. That's why we created Prologis Essentials to deliver an even higher level of partnership. More than a real estate solution, Prologis Essentials strives to be a support system designed to assist your team in a more thoughtful, streamlined way. Prologis Essentials combines dedicated customer experience teams with a new digital platform that revolutionizes how you access the products and services you need to run your operations more efficiently, cost-effectively, and sustainably. Explore PrologisEssentials.com to discover the online tools now available, including convenient facility management, a robust customer resource center, and the cost savings of our Prologis Essentials Marketplace. And to learn more about your customer experience team, an on-the-ground resource dedicated to managing your Prologis relationship and understanding your business, so they can connect you with their centralized network of experts that can help with your needs from move in to move out and everything in between. Activate your account today to get the superior in-person and digital customer experience of Prologis Essentials. When you need support, Prologis is now just a click or a phone call away.
All right. So before I bring Kunal back, I want to show you a brief video from a recent business news show. And the topic of metaverse is out everywhere, so you don't have to look very far. But I just want to play 60 or so seconds of this to give you an idea of some of the conversations taking place in the financial world as it relates to metaverse, not just the technology, but the business opportunities. Let's take a look.
A lot of investors, many of you out there maybe, are spending millions of real dollars on real estate in the virtual world, the metaverse. Prices in some areas up more than 400%. So why exactly are investors rushing in and buying up all this virtual land? Let's bring in Janine Yorio. She is Republic Realm CEO. Their firm just putting out the 2021 Metaverse Real Estate Report, which I read with much interest, Janine, because I'm one of these ding-dongs that's trying to understand exactly how it works. Here's my question, though. I understand the value of what's being bought in the sandbox and Decentraland and whatever, but what's to stop thousands of other metaverses from being created and diluting the value of all this property?
Well, first of all, I want to preface this by saying I love ding dongs. So thank you for spending time reading our report. If you think about it that way, you will talk yourself out of it. But I think you have to think about it this way. It's an enormous opportunity, and the metaverses that are launching early are most likely to find enormous user bases. So one important statistic to understand is there's only about 25,000 people that even own metaverse real estate today. So while there may be many more metaverses that crop up in the future, some of these early ones are going to have an enormous head start as we kick off the metaverse ecosystem. We're tracking over 300 metaverses, but only a handful have actually launched, and only about 24 or so even have land that can be purchased. So today, all the people that are looking to invest in metaverse real estate don't really have that many choices. And that's why we think it's such an interesting time to invest in this category.
And again, please, and I am that ding dong, so please correct me if I'm wrong. It's kind of like Bitcoin in a sense that in some of these metaverses, the sandbox, for example, I understand there are fixed numbers of parcels that will ever be created, correct? 464,000 or something, or 646,000, whatever the number was. I may have flipped it around. But that's the value of that scarcity is what ultimately I think gives it that value. It's very much a Bitcoin-like argument.
It's kind of like Bitcoin. It's also kind of like buying a billboard in a video game. So think of the video game you know best. And if that video game were to sell a specific billboard, or if you play FIFA World Cup and you could buy the stadium signage and advertise Coca-Cola, you can start to understand why you'd want to buy specific pixels inside a specific metaverse experience. It's also kind of like venture capital investing, where we're investing so early that you actually have to assess the caliber of the team that's building this and decide whether they've done it before and you think they're actually going to be able to execute on a vision that's going to attract thousands, if not millions of users, and keep them coming back time after time. So.
All right, so that was a little summary from a business perspective, a little deeper into some of the different worlds. So Kunal, let's come on back and let's have this conversation as it relates to the real estate applications. I mean, we could have played that clip for its entirety. And again, I would encourage anybody who's interested in this, it's a simple Google search, metaverse and real estate. But she brought up a good point about the first ones in. I mean, how many social media networks are there? You know, there's a couple that people adhere to: Facebook, Instagram. You know, we've had Snapchat for a lot of the younger kids. But I don't think 100 survive. So in the end, there's going to be 2 or 3, maybe 4, I don't know. But at that point, the number of people in those metaverses are going to dictate their value, right? So and if you have a central part of your metaverse owning real estate there, will have a higher value. Is that correct?
Yeah, that broadly sounds right. That's right.
So we heard one of our great real estate companies, part of the Realcomm community, Jamestown, actually was one of the first to jump in and start to dig in and figure out what a metaverse was. And on this past New Year's Eve, actually had a New Year's Eve celebration, a virtual one in Decentraland. And we still haven't heard how it went. We're going to dig into it a little bit deeper, but what was that all about? I mean, what happens when you do an event in Decentraland?
Sure. So to take a step back, I think there's a lot of buzz around today of virtual land sales, and when we talk about that, I think we're really missing the point in terms of what the true utility of the metaverse is, which is described in one phrase. I believe it can potentially act as a bridge between the digital world and the real world. Now, what do we mean by that? I think we can look at it across different asset classes. So we can look at it across office, hospitality, and retail. Let's start with retail. In the retail world, we've seen, I think, the fastest adoption of the metaverse in some sense, where you've had luxury retail brands set up all these stores in the metaverse. And if you buy certain NFTs in the metaverse, which are essentially proof of ownership of, say, a limited edition bag that's only available digitally, you can use that proof of ownership to then get discounts and special edition bags in the real world. So again, you see the bridge that they're creating in the digital world with the real world.
Right.
The two benefits that come out of it: one, it's an additional source of revenue for the retail brand. And second, you're redefining, rethinking how loyalty works, how customer loyalty works. I think you can apply the same principles across office and hospitality to, again, think through, what some of the use cases might be in those cases.
Right, and I want to also make a note for the audience. We all have visions of the 3D goggles that you're sitting on your couch, eating Doritos and playing in the virtual land or metaverse all day long. That's not really the only goal. I've seen some of the new glasses that have come out. We actually had the Google glasses on the Realcomm stage probably 6 years ago. That's how long we've been kind of following this. They're sleek. They're building cameras in. The technology, the physics is getting incredible. So a pair of glasses, just like the one you're wearing, could ultimately be a metaverse set of glasses. Now, maybe you don't get the full immersive effect, but for augmented reality experiences, that's what they're planning. They're not planning that we're all walking around in goggles. Now, another example I heard was Sotheby's. One Sotheby's actually is selling a virtual representation in a metaverse of a condo or a home in Miami Beach, which means when you buy the physical home, you get your virtual counterpart, if you will. What does that mean? I mean, why would I want a virtual counterpart? To have a virtual party that goes along with my real party? How does that work?
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is that as more and more people start operating and spending more time in the metaverse, you want to have digital assets, just like you have physical assets in the real world. And those digital assets act as a congregation point for people in the digital world, just as your home in Miami Beach would act as a point of congregation for people in the real world.
Yeah, and I've been following interactive TV for probably 25 years, and it was supposed to be brought to us over the cable stations. And I give you a really simple example. You're watching your favorite television show, and I actually saw this demonstrated probably 20 years ago. And if I connect that dot to this metaverse conversation, I think it makes some sense. Where you're watching your favorite TV show, and all of a sudden you like what your favorite character is wearing. And there's a button on your remote that says, highlight everything on this screen in this scene of this movie or this television show that's for sale. And you click on it, and the lamp's for sale, the couch is for sale, the shirt's for sale. And you just take your little laser and you point it at it, and you click on here, a little window pops up and says, buy the shirt for $65 from Amazon.com. Click button, done. That to me was a really good practical example of how you could integrate physical, and the experiences. And I think if you took YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and all these videos are coming out, and as well as movies, and then you overlay the interactivity of the internet and you present it in this 3D world, I think there's some real opportunities.
Yeah. And what I'd add there is, today your avatar in Decentraland may not look like you, but as technology improves and as the real world individuals represent the digital avatars more and more across different spectrum, I think there'll be more value for those collectibles in the digital world, because you would want your avatars to also wear similar clothes that you do, or to dress in a certain way, shape, or fashion.
So I want to take our last minute or two and focus on this question. What advice, insight, guidance, pearls of wisdom would you offer the real estate world, who frankly is struggling right now, trying to figure out who's coming back to the office, who's coming back to the mall, when, how many, and they're worried about leases being renewed, and what is the future of physical space? What advice do you give to those people about keeping an eye on the metaverse?
Yeah, two pieces of advice. One, as an industry, we've been notorious to being late adopters of technology. And I think, this is our chance to actually embrace tech while it's still starting. So to keep a tab on, in general, what's happening in the metaverse. Specifically, I would say for retail and office owners, the way we've viewed ourselves is physical providers of space. I think with the metaverse, there's going to be probably a change in terms of landlords not just providing space, but also providing services in the digital world. So kind of start thinking in terms of that mindset, what those services could be and how those services could act as a bridge between the digital world and the real world is a good starting point. This conversation is evolving on a weekly basis, which again brings to light how important it is for us to be on top of some of the conversations that are going here.
Yeah. Well, and I'll go back to our mid-roll commercial with Prologis. I remember being at a Prologis facility in Tokyo in 2004, okay, where they were announcing some new, really crazy, good ideas about the future of an industrial warehouse. Okay, so, and that's when they jumped into being innovative, at least in my memory. Think about all these years later, because they jumped into something they didn't understand, but they committed to staying with it. Now we look at Prologis, probably one of, if not the most innovative commercial real estate company on the planet. Okay, in an area, industrial, where you really wouldn't think there was a lot of room for innovation compared to office and retail. So I guess we'll end the conversation. We agree that you have to keep an eye on this. Realcomm is certainly going to keep an eye on this. We're going to have many more conversations on Realcomm Live, webinars at our conferences, but we're going to be pragmatic. We're going to ask hard questions. We're not going to jump on the hype train, but we're going to look for those nuggets of wisdom that will help the real estate industry figure that out. And I hope you stay with us on your journey and keep us apprised and come back on the show.
Awesome. It was a pleasure being here.
Awesome. Well, we will be back in touch. And again, looking forward to watching to see how these two worlds collide. Thank you. All right, with that, let's bring on Mr. Howard Berger. He's going to give us a little bit of the news and share with us what the heck is going on in real estate technology. I'm trying, and I can see glimpses of it. I really can, glimpses. But it's going to be a challenge, I think, for the real estate industry to deal with their existing issues and problems and opportunities in the physical world and then figure this out on top. It's going to take a real delicate balance, I think.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it was a good start having Kunal on today. I think we clarified a lot, about the nature of the metaverse and maybe expose some potential value. And I think we just have to continue doing that and just keeping an eye on it. It's gonna, this is going to be a long-term development.
Well, and I'm going to restate it because it's been our position from the beginning. We are incredible advocates of technology. My whole career has been spent on this, specifically as it relates to real estate. But the key is not to get so bought into the hype that you lose sight of reality, right? Yes, there's opportunities. Yes, the internet changed the world. We knew it would. But you have to be careful, pragmatic, and a little bit more scientific. Yes, you have to take some wild swings for the fence. But we don't want to see anybody take such big swings that they fail and then give up on it, because the metaverse is real and it's going to impact our industry, but we got to be pragmatic as to how we deal with it, I think.
I totally agree. Let me
get out of your way and do the news.
Oh, thanks, Jim. And Kunal, thank you for joining us. This is a great conversation on what I think is a mind-blowing topic. So for the news, every week we highlight a couple of articles from our weekly news briefing. We release it every Thursday morning. And the lead article this week is actually a link to a video of an interview by Jim with the executive leadership of the RECC, that's the Real Estate Cyber Consortium, which actually took place in the Realcomm Live studio at our conference in November. And Jim led a panel with Charles Myers, who's the executive director of RECC, along with our executive leadership team, Thano Lambrinos from Quadreal, Sean Neal in Brookfield, and Jim Whalen from Boston Properties. And they discussed the consortium, how it's become a critical resource for the industry. So I would just encourage you, if you're not familiar with the RECC, take a couple of minutes, watch the video, learn how you can become part of this important organization. Also, I want to shout out to this week's tech partner, Tim Curran, CEO of Building Engines, who gave us a look ahead at their proposed direction with building operations and maintenance. You may remember Building Engines was recently acquired by JLL, and they just recently surveyed over 500 property professionals on their expectations for 2022. And nearly half are planning to increase their tech spend this year. What are they going to be targeting? Mainly building operations and tenant experience. Those top the list. And not a surprise that 63% of the respondents are planning to address health, wellness, air quality. Thank you, Building Engines, for a great report. So the industry consolidation and M&A activity is getting more fascinating by the day. And in my opinion, the big news this week, was the acquisition of Angus Systems by MRI. And I think this is one of the well-kept secret. Totally did not see this one coming. This is MRI's, actually, their second recent facility management Proptech acquisition, post the acquisition of FSI out of the UK in 2021. With Angus's innovative focus on access control, tenant experience, they do work order management, credentialing, touchless management, amenity services, and building communications. They now have more than 700 customers, 2.7 billion square feet under management. And this is going to give MRI a strong foothold in the US for commercial, resi, multifamily, retail, and manufacturing. Next, so Qualcomm's in the news again. We mainly think of Qualcomm as making chips for the wireless technology space, smartphones, 5G, Wi-Fi, etc. But at the upcoming National Retail Federation show, the NRF, they're going to be showing some new IoT capabilities squarely focused on assisting retailers with digitally transforming their business processes. It's good to hear. They're out to kick the retail experience up a notch. This is a relatively new market opportunity for Qualcomm. Now, they already have 13,000 customers out there, and they have strategically partnered with the big folks like Walmart. So we'll keep an eye on that. Actually, that's it for me today. Check out our weekly briefing, and I will see you all next week.
All right. So, Walmart's come up in the news a lot in the last couple of weeks. Metaverse, digital real estate experience with Qualcomm. There's a lot going on behind the scenes, and I think I agree with Kunal. I think the real estate industry is going to get hit first by these emerging technologies in the retail space because they are absolutely looking to redefine themselves. But office is not much further behind, and because of the pandemic and what it forces us to do, office might actually get ahead of retail.
Yeah. I would personally, I think retail is a natural. But explain to me, why did somebody pay $400,000 for a lot next to Snoop Dogg's Decentraland house?
But again, much smarter guys than I. Bill Gates also said this internet thing was a passing fancy, a passing fad. So we got to be careful. I always keep
I keep an open mind.
Seriously, we have open mind. But because of our age and how long we've been at this, please allow us to ask the difficult questions because
Absolutely.
I've seen a million mistakes over my career. I've heard the stories over and over. And whenever I hear somebody say this is the new normal, I usually run for the exit door because normal has a way of finding its way back into our world, right? Mm-hmm. And things don't change. That's the biggest thing. Things don't change as fast as everybody expects them to.
Nope. This one's going to have some runway to it, but there's some fire under it, and it's there obviously the interest is high.
Billions of dollars of fire. So Howard, great job as always. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week. All right, before we wrap the show, let's hear from our final sponsor, and I'm going to come back and tell you what's in store for next week. All right, thank you to all of our sponsors. So typically every year in the January timeframe, our team, ranging from 10 people to 1, ascends on the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. We've been doing this for 20 years. And people say, well, why would you go to a consumer electronics show where you focus on real estate technology? And I would argue because for 25, 30 years, all the big ideas start in general tech and then make their way into our world. So we always like to get a jump on what's coming down the road for the general population, so we can then sit there and dissect what does it mean to the real estate sector. So this year, because we only spent abbreviated time at CES ourselves, we decided to go out and get somebody who really dove into it. Mark Sina, the CEO and principal analyst with Smart Tech Research, knows CES inside and out, dove into it, found the best products, the trends, the themes. So we're going to have him on next week, and we're going to talk about the big ideas that he saw at CES And then we're going to slowly peel back the onion and figure out how does that impact the built environment. So join us next week as we unpack CES as it relates to real estate technology. It's going to be an exciting show, and we're looking forward to seeing all of you again next week. And with that, have a great weekend and be well.